cryptocurrency breaking above $8,000. Bitcoin bulls are rejoicing. We got Tom Lee from Fundstrat. He says there's an even bigger rally on the way. He joins us now. Hey, Tom, welcome to Futures Now.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's just get right into it. What's the target we should be seeing? 9,000, 10,000, 20,000? Is that coming back in our lifetime? What's going on here?
Yes. I mean, I guess all of the above. I think in the near term, technical levels really matter. So I think once we hold this 8,000, I think people have their sights on even something like 10,000. But I think the bigger picture is the narrative for Bitcoin, kind of looked questionable for a few months because there were regulatory clampdowns and people thought the protocol was broken. And people were losing interest. But I think now we're sort of seeing, potential institutional participation again, bank infrastructure through MasterCard, Visa, and then the potential for an ETF. And I think this is, going to help Bitcoin break back towards the old highs, the all-time highs.
What about when those regulatory risks come back into the market? Because you got to feel like those didn't go away permanently. Maybe it's just a temporary distraction from what regulators are still looking at. They may still try to shut this thing down.
Yeah, that's right. It's not like the regulators are saying here that everyone should be buying crypto. But I think the market's starting to discern that, a lot of this regulatory scrutiny is on ICOs and it's on platform tokens, things that are designed that could be securities. Bitcoin, I think, is in a very different camp, and I think that explains why its dominance or its share of the crypto market's actually been rising in this past 2-week rally.
Hey, Tom, Jeff Kilberg here in Chicago. I just want to jump in and ask a question. Obviously, we saw momentum really turn around. And some could argue, at least the bulls can argue, the fact that that 6,000 level was like a coiled spring. And now we're seeing the move up higher. But this conversation, these rumors about the ETF, this Bitcoin ETF coming to fruition, possibly as early as August 15th. What does that do to the price of Bitcoin when we actually hear the SEC say this conduit for global investors coming to an ETF Bitcoin is actually happening?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think the probability is probably still like a 50-50. It's not really, I think, a done deal. But I think that the reasons if it doesn't get accepted are very different than what it was a year ago. And I think that's why it's actually a catalyst, because I think investors are going to realize we're moving one step closer to actually seeing another way for investors to gain exposure. But yeah, I mean, an ETF it solves a lot of problems for investors. It's not going to force them to buy ICOs. They'll take care of the taxes, and if regulators are comfortable with custody, I mean, it's a pretty smart way for investors to add crypto to their portfolio. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it should be a catalyst.
And where does the price go?
Tom, this is Anthony in New York. Yeah, Tom, Anthony in New York. Quick question for you. This is for my own personal portfolio. I own some of the other coins. I don't own Bitcoin, but in the sell-off, they all came off at once. But now we've seen Bitcoin bounce $2,000 off its lows, but Ethereum, Litecoin, and the rest of them are just kind of sitting there. So is this just a Bitcoin move, and is this because of the ETF?
Well, I mean, those other coins are biding their time, right? Because this ETF really only primarily benefits Bitcoin. But we've written about this before. We said the altcoin rally, which we thought peaked on January 25th. That's when we first wrote about it peaking. We didn't think it would recover until mid-August to mid-September at the earliest. So I still think there's an altcoin rally coming. But right now it's a lot more obvious for Bitcoin. And in fact, if you look at hedge fund beta to Bitcoin, it's actually reversed. So I think hedge funds are institutionally probably going net long Bitcoin. I mean, when you look at tracking beta.
Tom, let's just end it. Simple question here. What is your price target on Bitcoin?
Well, we're still just working with our year-end target, which is 25,000.